So, last time we've seen, the project at this kind of state. Let me open up the instances. Okay, so we can start the game, we're connected, and so forth. So, yeah, we do have some basic functionality, even though it now has some bugs. We can drop national card. Oh, yeah, we do have some null references over here. Anyway, yeah, so as we already know, the project does has a few issues with all of this. And, well, I think it's time for this project to get a new refactor, mostly because we have done so many things. And, for example, if we go on the game manager, you can see that we basically written the way we handle turns so many times, and so many things have changed that it starts to get pretty encumbered, which means it's pretty difficult to work with the project. Okay, and as we went along, we've seen how much important basically one method became, rather than having all different scripts and all different things, be placed all over the project. So I think it's time for a better refactor, and for that we can refactor the entire project. I'm also planning to implement a new network library for this project. That it's not Photon, it's not something we're going to be bothered about for a few parts at least. Okay, so we're simply going to be using a few new things, which means we will have to change so many stuff, especially how we handle multiplayer and so on, which is going to make the project really becoming a chore. So we're going to start it again. Obviously, if you want to continue with this series, or the first part, before the refactor, so everything before this part, then you can do so. But yeah, I'm going to start working on it again. Obviously, if you are new to this channel, this might be coming as a shock, but if you are old to the channel, then that's nothing new. We always do things the best way we can. Okay, so I'm not even going to bother changing or removing scripts to this. I'm simply going to go and start with a new project. For the first few parts, we're not really going to bother so much about turns and things like that. We're going to create the card system. It's going to be pretty similar to what we had for this. So because with all of this, we could just work as well. Okay, so I'm going to be keeping the old project. I'm going to be keeping it just so that we can see and compare differences and see everything we need to be doing with this. Okay, so for the first few parts, we're also not going to need graphics, so don't worry about it. We're not really going to be to have a need to download anything. Just a UI image like this should work for our, it basically should work for our cards. Okay, for card replacement. We can go and maybe talk about how you can create your cards later. I mean, graphics. So let's create a new folder first for card, or just, cards. Then we're going to create our first script, which is going to be called a card. If we compare it with our previous, with our previous card, okay, we're going to see a few things. Everything you see that is not, that it has the attribute system.non-serialized on top, okay, it means that it's a runtime value. So I think it should probably be better if we split this up, maybe into a subclass, or maybe like this. We'll see. Okay, then other things that we know they're going to be set as, they're going to be shared throughout all of our cards. That will be the cost, okay, and probably the card properties. And of course, most likely we also want to have a card type. We could either use a card type like this, or we could just implement base classes for the card. I think the way I did this with card type is actually a better way, because we can just plug and play the types of cards we want. Actually, yeah, okay, maybe we'll see how that is going to turn out. So anyway, let's go back to our cards, or to our new cards. I'm going to add the namespace, and this now is going to derive from scribable object. We can delete this, and because it's scribable object, we can add create asset menu and just call it card for now. Okay, we already know that we're going to need some runtime values, so we could either do runtime here, okay, which means runtime values, runtime, and if I don't do a system.serializable, then everything inside this class will have to be instantiated, which means I will not have to add the system.non-serialized attribute on top of it. So let's start with this. Let's start with an instance ID. An instance ID is basically the ID we have when we instantiate the card, because we're not going to be using the actual scribable object, obviously, because that means we're changing values on our actual card we keep as an asset, instead of the card that it's actually playing inside the game. So if you're going to store maybe the health for this card, okay, if the card type allows it, then you're going to be changing the entire health for the card. Okay, we'll see about health. Maybe we're going to keep it differently. We'll see. Back to our card. We're going to need either a card type, maybe a card cost, but then we come to the realization of having different card types. So for example, a resource card, it's not an actual, it doesn't cost anything. You can drop one resource card per turn. Obviously, that card type doesn't actually need a cost field. Okay, so let's keep it slightly more organized, and then I'm going to create this as an abstract class, which means I won't be able to use the create asset menu to create the card itself, because I'm not able to instance the abstract class itself. Therefore, I'm going to go onto my cards, and I'm going to create my first type of card, which is going to be a resources card. Add this up, add the namespace, and I would like for this to derive from the card. Okay, because this is now a scriptable object, I can actually create asset menu, menu name, resources, not resources, cards, resource card. Okay, so we can now use a few methods. For example, we can use a public abstract void or a virtual one, but I think an abstract void will make more sense since the entire class is also abstract void. And we can say, actually, let's return a bool instead of a void, can use card. Okay. Oops. Then on the resource card, we can implement that can use card in a way, let's say return true, whatever. So basically, to do here, check if player has dropped a resources card or if he is allowed to, let's say instead of drop has used, have drop, is allowed to drop 2 or more resource cards. Okay, so if we wanted to now create a different card, let's see, we have an error. The error is here. If we wanted now to create maybe a creature card, let's create a new class. Let's call this creature card. Let's make this derived from card, then implement the abstract class, and we're going to, let's create this as cards, creature card. Okay, let's say return false here. So to do here, check if a player has enough resources to play the card. Okay, which automatically gives us a way so that we can do, let's make it a serialized field instead, for an integer that is the cost or the card cost. So how much does it cost to play the resources, this creature card, to drop it? Okay, if it has any extra abilities, we can add it as a layer and basically still as a scriptable object and drop it onto a list, maybe here or whatever. Okay, so that will be the way we are going to be controlling our cards, and we're going to be implementing them. In contrast to what we had before, where we had the card types as scriptable objects and we were simply changing the types, which doesn't make a lot of sense, since I guess you will already know what type of card you want to make, and having variables that work for both or all types of cards, well, it's kind of silly if you think about it. Okay, so it's better to keep each card, control what it can do by itself instead of controlling what else you might want to do with this. This will also help us later when we want to categorize cards and keeping them in lists to manage what we do with them. Okay, especially when it comes to multiplayer, we will always know, and it will be easier not to to tinker with this and maybe hack it, because each card will always going to be behave at its proper, as it should be. Okay, because the creature card won't be able to take any properties from a resources card, so that means the creature card could only do what can creatures do. Okay, so can use card is basically, let's rename this to can drop card. I think it's better if we do it like that, because dropping the card is different than using it. Okay, which means we could implement the abstract bool for can use card, or maybe card can attack or something like that. Let's say return false here, and we're going to write to do check if this card is tapped or not. Okay, so on the creature card, what card can use card, return false, to do check if creature can attack this turn. Obviously this is more complicated than it might look, because creature, we will have to also check with the server if the other player says that you can also, well, maybe not if the other player, maybe if we do an authoritative server, we could check if the other player can actually attack. And maybe, you know, if you are tinkering with the creature cards, maybe you are untapping them or whatever. This will come in handy later, not right now. So, oops. The other thing that we know pretty much all cards will have, it will be if is tapped or not. Okay. So maybe we want to change this onto, actually we can implement this now, can use card. We could just say return is tapped or the opposite of is tapped. Okay. So we could also implement the other method, which is going to be public abstract bool use card. So what happens when you are actually using this card? Okay, for the resources card, it's going to be pretty fairly simple. Implement the abstract class, and it's going to be saying is tapped equals true. Okay, but I'm going to hardcode return true because using this card, since we can say, or well, can use card, we'll know if we can actually use the card. For the resources card is kind of mundane. Okay, so I'm always going to be hardcoding return true because if you can't tap the resource card, well, that means you basically can't use it. So yeah, I'm just going to turn is tapped equals true and return true. Now the other methods that, well, we can do this also for use card. For the creature card is going to be making them to attack. So return false here as well and say to do put creature on attack state. Okay, and I'm going to write set the parentheses probably because you're probably going to have this as an attack state. Resources card then, oops, card, okay. Okay, so we have all of this going. Runtime values. I'm going to create an abstract method for this, again, for init card. And on. Let's see, do we have an instance? We only have on destroy, on disable, and on enable. The only problem is we don't know when scriptable objects are actually running the on enable. I think it has to do when we are actually instantiating. So that's something we would like to do. So let's see. Actually, no, it's not going to work like that, I believe. So yeah, we're just going to make our own abstract void init card. Maybe if we do a constructor for this, we're going to run it. Let's see, debug.log card is instantiating. This is a little bit tricky because these are scriptable objects and they are meant to work inside Unity, inside the editor as assets. Keep that in mind. So we might have a few issues. We'll see. Create a card, create this as well. So on both of these cases, actually, you know what? Let's not make this. Let's not make it an abstract. Let's just make it a virtual void. And I'm going to say runtime values, new runtime values. Okay, so I don't have to actually implement this now because it already has its values. Let's not implement this as well. Okay, awesome. So let's actually go and test this. Okay, So, however, to test this, we're going to need another script that's basically just going to create a new card. Okay, so let's call this managers, whatever, and I'm just going to call this as test manager. Okay, I'm not going to bother doing anything with this. I'm simply going to drop an instance of a card as a scriptable object. Yeah, we do need the namespace, however, so that we can access the card. Okay, so public card, target card, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to instantiate the target card. This will be kind of interesting to see if it actually runs the constructor when we instantiate it rather than when we create it inside the editor. Okay, so let's go under assets and create folder, data. I'm just going to create, you can create another folder for card. Okay, so let's see, create cards. Let's say resource card, and yeah, as you can see, it does instantiate the card here, which is something we don't want. We don't really care if we have runtime values on the editor. Let's see, however, if this is going to run. Let's add an empty game object. So let's see, let's drop the test manager and let's assign the card. Okay, I'm going to clear it and hit play, and let's see if this will also run the constructor. And it does run the constructor, but you see it did it 2 times. So these 2 times are actually the first time you are actually running the scriptable object, and when you instantiate it, it runs it a second time, which means we basically can use a constructor. If we do this as on enable, inside on enable, I mean, let's say init card. So right off the bat, we don't actually use this. Okay, we can use the constructor. Let's see on enable. And you can see that we can already see that we have a problem with on enable, because first one is done here. Do a clear, hit play. So yeah, same problem. Okay, so there we go. Yeah, so unfortunately we're going to have to implement our own solution to this. So we're not going to be using any of this. We're simply going to be forcing an init card whenever we are instantiating the cards. So that will mean it's not going to be that it's not going to be that much of a chore, or we can just say target card, init card, and there we go. That's it. Okay, so basically all we have to say is, yeah, we forgot to add the debug log. Let's add that as well. Not that it's going to matter. We know that this is going to run as we want to. Init card. Okay, so hit play. So we all get one. Okay, awesome. So start to contemplate a little bit what are we doing with this and why are we handling it this way rather than the old way. Obviously, if you prefer the old way, because I'm going to be creating a specific card game, obviously, and if you want to do something else, or if you want to make the system a little bit more dynamic, maybe with the scriptable objects we kept in the past, okay, that's entirely up to you. There's no one way to do this. It all depends on the type of game you are going to want to make. So, okay, take some decisions, take some informed decisions about on what you want to make, and just follow what you want to do. It's not going to be that much different if you are still keeping with the old project. But there's simply going to be changed a few calls. You either do this via the card type or via the card class. It's entirely up to you. Okay, we're going for something specific, which means we don't have to be that much modular and that much dynamic, because if you're going for something specific, then yeah, keeping it or making sure everything is modular can be an actual problem rather than something that is helping you. Okay, that was my main cause that yeah, the project became more of a chore, but I really like this project and I would like to keep it going, especially since we can add yeah, especially since we're going to see some different network libraries that are going to help us with a lot of things. Now, I think we are way over past the time for this project, for this part. Okay, let's keep it like this, and on the next one we're going to start creating a little bit more how we're going to handle managers, how we're going to handle operations and all those things. Okay, we'll see on the next project. Maybe we'll work a little bit onto the, yeah, maybe we'll work a little bit more for the project. Now, as some of you might know, we're going to start live streaming at some point in the future. I'm still waiting for the ISP, so maybe this project is going to turn into one of the live stream projects. I'm going to take a few live stream projects and we're going to be doing them live onto, yeah, we're going to be doing them live, which gives you the option to say your opinions, comment or ask questions, and yeah. Okay, so yeah, as I said, another question that was always coming into play, you were asking, was how are you going to make, how did I make the card templates and yeah, you know, the actual cards and stuff like that, which is actually really interesting, because it was just 15 minutes on Photoshop. But I'm going to keep that as a live stream. So I'm going to get one day, maybe 1 or 2 days in the week, where we're just going to be doing, or I'm going to be live streaming art assets. Obviously, I'm not really that great of an artist, but maybe that will help you to, you know, maybe get you off your feet and start doing maybe things, or try things. Art is mostly trying, same as programming. Okay, and failing. So anyway, yeah, so big changes, a lot of stuff coming, a lot of new series are going to come as well, because yeah, I will have a little bit more free time to record at this point. So yeah, keep on, hold on for anything, for all the exciting news and exciting things that are going to happen. As always, for me to be able to keep doing all of this, I will really need the support you are giving already for this great amount of time. So I think we are about 4 to 5 years doing this channel. So yeah, let's not delay this anymore. As always, like, subscribe, and if you like to see more stuff, obviously consider supporting me on Patreon, and we can keep doing all of this. I'll see you on the next one.